You know this story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? We have known them from our childhood. They are well-known, well-beloved, favorite stories from the Bible. And let me tell you, they were favorite also in the Hebrew society and the early Christian church. These images were painted on the walls of catacombs in Rome when early Christians were persecuted. So they were finding encouragement, inspiration from these heroes, Hebrew heroes, who stood firm for God. Now, before I continue, let me give you a little bit background story here. You see, when we talk about the book of Daniel, you have to know where these three young Hebrew worthies, where they were when this great trial came to them. In chapter 1, we are told that they were deported from the land of Judah. They were from royal seed. They were from, and they received early training at their home. Now they came to the king Nebuchadnezzar's court. They actually came to King's College, University of Babylon, the empire of the world, the headquarters of the world. Like today is Washington, D.C. Do you agree with me? United States is a new empire, no question about that. And we are here. So now, remarkable things have happened. These three young men were brought there. And by the way, King Nebuchadnezzar was a very capable leader and a ruler. Very intelligent, very capable, but sometimes he was ruthless, and he was a polytheist, he was a pagan. But he came in contact with the living God. Now, this contact with the living God, if you read the book of Daniel, it's quite interesting because first part of the book of Daniel deals a lot with King Nebuchadnezzar. So the emperor of then world, of the empire, he was having direct communication with the divine being, with the supreme being, with God. Now, the book of Daniel can neatly be divided in two sections. First 6 chapters are the stories about the things that happen in king's court. You are having, they refused to eat king's food, chapter 1. Chapter 2, there is an image, the king had a dream. Chapter 3, fiery furnace. Chapter 4, you are having king again have a dream. Now, interestingly, in chapter 2, you are having giant metallic image with different metals. Chapter 3, you are having giant golden image. Chapter 4, you are having giant tree. So again, we are dealing with giants here in Daniel's book. But now, in particular, chapter 3, we are having a golden image. Now let me tell you a little bit what happened. This was Neo-Babylonian kingdom. And so Nebuchadnezzar brought these young men, and he was training them to assume a leading role in the kingdom, to be trained in all the sciences, languages, and so on. And they succeeded very well. You remember chapter 1 that they refused to eat king's food? King was very generous and offered them the best food according to his understanding, but they refused to eat that food. And then what happened? Daniel was the spokesperson representing the group. He said to the king, to actually the man who was in charge of these students, and he said, we cannot eat this food. Give us just simple food. And then for 10 days, just check us out. And what happened after 10 days? And when the training completed, when King Nebuchadnezzar personally examined the students. Now, please know that. He was a very intelligent man. He personally examined the students in chapter 1. He found them to be how many times better? 10 times better. So King Nebuchadnezzar was not ignorant about these young men. He knew something about that. But now I want to tell you about the Babylonian kingdom. We often do not have a clear conception how advanced and how powerful was that kingdom. It was not by chance compared to the head of gold. Georges Roux, a French author who wrote a book about Iraq, he said Babylon was an amazing kingdom. But today people don't understand. You see, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, especially water engineering, coming from Babylon. Our computation of time, where do we get, division of time? That minute has, an hour has 60 minutes and minute has 60 seconds. It comes from Babylon. So Greeks actually adopted Babylonian wisdom and science and then transmitted to the Romans, and it comes from Greeks and Romans to the modern Western world. So Babylon was a powerful, you can see ziggurat, these temples, stepped temples. Even today, archaeologists discovering them. They had, the Ishtar Gate. If you go to Berlin Museum, you can see this, and the lions. So it was a powerful, you heard about hanging gardens. So this was the place where these three Hebrews were brought and trained. And they were thinking, wow, what happened to our kingdom, to Judah? Why are we here? We have superior religion to this Babylonian polytheistic religion, but you see how advanced they are. Why we are here? So these were the questions, the challenges that they faced at that time. Now, what happens next? Let me just tell you a little bit here in this story. Now, they also had with their religion was quite interesting. Historians have discovered some of their epics. One is called Enuma Elish. It's a story of creation, but more about Genesis of gods. Brother Boris and other brethren who were preparing the program here said they were talking about how we today can, in the time of universal deceit, how we can be separate and have a clear vision. And I'll tell you a little bit in the second part of this presentation more how this story applies to us today. You see, this story, Enuma Elish, actually talks about the origin, how the world was created, but not only world, material world, but how gods came into existence. So you see, in Babylonian religion, God is not transcendent outside of this material world. Gods are part of the mass energy complex, you see. And this is compatible with evolutionary theory. Because, even evolutionists today admit they can be a supreme being or some higher intelligences in the universe. But they do not admit that these supreme being, God, created everything. So see, this is something that we will come later on why Nebuchadnezzar had a problem and he was going back and forth, acknowledging the God of Hebrews, and then again, coming back to all gods, plurality. But we will touch on that later on. The chief god in Babylon was Marduk, and so on. So let me just move a little bit further. Now in chapter 2, King had a dream. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Now he called his astrologers, magicians, and said, well, gentlemen, I had a dream. And they say, Your Majesty, tell us the dream, and we will tell you the interpretation. By the way, Majesty, thank you for the pay raise last month. So please, we are here. Now, these were the think tanks of that time. Do you know that every ruler, every kingdom has even today think tanks? These are the wise men. These are the guys, smart guys, who monitor, who record the data, who, counsel, advise the rulers. Now, but the king said, look, but I don't know the dream. I forgot the dream. And what did they say then? Oh, well, king, but there is no one on earth who can tell you your dream. This secret is only with gods who dwell in heaven. So you see, they admitted their limitation. But he said, look, but you are supposed to tell me this. I am paying you for this to communicate with these higher beings. So what's going on? Daniel comes in. He wanted to kill them all, but Daniel said, oh, don't kill them all. Give me some time. And then Daniel comes with interpretation. Now it's interesting, the king in chapter, and then we have the metallic image, all these images, and you are here, and then there is another kingdom, and then ultimately there is a stone cut out without hands, hitting the image in the feet. The image was broken in pieces, and the wind blew it away, and the stone filled the whole earth, and this kingdom will never pass away. Now in chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar makes what? A golden image. Oh, that's very interesting. Why did he do that? Yeah. Now, there are two questions before I say that. One is, this young man had a major victory in chapter 1. They refused to eat the food. And God gave them victory, 10 times wiser. They were promoted, they were in high positions. Chapter 2, king has a dream, again, a victory. King acknowledges their God as a supreme God. But now, why in chapter 3 we have again a test? You see, brethren, when you have one victory or 2 victories with the Lord, this is not the end of the story. There will be another trial, another test. You know, perseverance of the saints. Here is the patience of the saints. So God is bringing other tests. You know, He's preparing you for eternity. So this is something, you know, we have to be every day subject. Every morning, Apostle Paul said, I'm dying what? Every day. This is the secret of Christian success. Now, the circumstances were that the proud King Nebuchadnezzar had set up a golden image, 90 feet high, 9 feet wide. Now, I don't know how he was inspired. Was he inspired by that metallic image that he saw in the dream, or some image of his gods, anyway, that was made of solid gold? And he put it in the plain of Dura. And then, what did he want to do? Actually, he wanted to say, well, my kingdom will not pass away. It will stay forever. And every culture and every religion has to conform to my kingdom and to my ideology. There is no departure. No base metal of deviation from his religion and culture will be tolerated. He would exclude all possible sources of division and disintegration. Everyone must conform. So all the officials, high officials of the Babylonian Empire had been summoned to the dedication ceremony. An orchestra was playing and raising the temperature. I will not be reading much today from this story to save time. You know the story. I want to comment on that story and just analyze it. Now, have you ever been in a crowd, very large crowd, when people are kind of taken by emotionally high? You probably have seen that in large rock concerts when their minds are taken over, but also rallies. If you saw Nazi rallies, when in Germany, tens and hundreds of thousands of young men or young people were there, and then the leader appears. He's mesmerizing the masses. It's a courage not to get up when everybody gets up. You are just taken. It's like an energy blowing. So this was, could you imagine that? Everybody's there. All the officials of the kingdom are there. And everybody is supposed to kneel down, to bow down when certain sound will be given. I wonder where Daniel was. Daniel is not mentioned in the story. Now, Daniel was kind of a leader of the group. He was the man not only who had general wisdom, he had also ability to interpret the dreams and visions. But conspicuously, Daniel was absent. Well, this is a lesson for us. It's good to have mature, trusted Christian friends experience close to us, but sometimes God may permit us to be alone without these experienced brethren around us and go through a trial. So Daniel was not there. 3 of them were alone. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. You see, this Babylonian king tried to actually homogenize the kingdom. He changed their names. They were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel, his name simply means God is my judge. Hananiah, God is gracious. And Mishael, who is like Yahweh or Jehovah. Azariah, God is my help. Now they changed their names. They wanted to change their identity. But they refused. You see, they can change your name, but you remain the same. You didn't change your mind, your identity. Young people, today you have to know your identity, who you are. What do you stand for? Where you're coming from, where you're going. What are the moral values that you stand for? In this society, modern society. You see, what is very interesting in our society today, the society keeps the name and changes the identity. For example, I don't know how about the United States, you're having these issues too, but in Canada, the definition of marriage has been changed officially. Now, the marriage, traditionally, what we understood it to be, heterosexual, lifelong relationship, Christ-centered, it's not there. It's gone. You have the name, but the identity is changed. So you see, this also was present in Babylonian Empire. They were trying to homogenize, to change their identity. Now what happens here? The scene is set for a great cultural and religious spectacle. But there is something sinister about this. Because Nebuchadnezzar has resorted to the the most serious sanction for disobedience at this time. If you disobey, if you do not bow down, if you do not worship, you will be thrown in the fiery furnace. This was really extremely harsh punishment. And the challenge for the three young men was simply there. They had to face it. Brother Boris said today, giants appear on our road or our way, and we cannot avoid them. We have to deal with them. You see, there are moments in life when you have to make a choice. There is no way out. You have to either compromise or you stand for the principle. You no way out. You see, this is something that these three young men faced at that time. No other choice. Either stand for God or compromise. The problem would not go away. You see, there is a poet, James Russell Lowell. You heard about the song. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide some great cause, God's new Messiah, offering each the bloom or blight. Parts the goats upon the left hand and the sheep upon the right, and the choice goes by forever twixt the darkness and that light. See, the choice has to be made. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down. They refused to renounce God and His commands. They refused to follow the crowd. They were determined to stand out against this evil thing and to be faithful to God, to the Lord at any cost. Here was courage of the highest order. Now they didn't bow down. But now what comes next? Nebuchadnezzar offers to them the second chance. Now, when he heard they didn't bow down, he invites them to himself for an interview. Nebuchadnezzar could not believe. He knows these three young men. He knows how they demonstrated their abilities and wisdom and skills. And he was thinking, well, I don't believe that they are openly defying my command. So he's, telling them, is it true that you refuse to obey? Is it true? Now, it makes their situation even more difficult, because Nebuchadnezzar was also kind to them. He was giving them certain privileges, and he was giving them high positions and position of trust, and he recognized their skills and ability. Now he says, look, is it really true that you refuse to obey my command? What you will do now? Will you simply disrespect me and disregard my kindness to you? But now they had opportunity. Jerusalem was far away. Nobody could see. You just flex your joints in the knees, just bow down, and that's it. Or you don't do it. Spurgeon, a well-known preacher, said once that character is what you are in the dark, when no one sees you. That's the character, what you are in the dark. Yes, it was easy to compromise on morality, honesty, faithfulness to the Scriptures, to cut few corners. But with great courage and dignity, they told the king that they were not going to argue with him. They refused to save the situation or to make a compromise. They were following the tradition of Moses, Hebrews 11, 24, 25. By faith, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to share ill treatment with the people of God than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. They were precursors of forerunners of Jesus Christ. When Satan came to him and offered to him all the kingdoms of this world, just bow down and worship me and I will give you all these things. Jesus said, no, worship God and serve him only. So these are the men. The action of young men, they took courage. Now, what happens next? The gloves are off. In verse 17, let us open for a moment Daniel chapter 3 and read verse 17. I think brother just read for the opening this verse. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Now, they felt some security. Now, I'm asking you the question, where was based their confidence? They said, God can deliver us from the fiery furnace. Where was based their confidence? It was based trust in God, right? They knew God. Did they have experiences with God? Yes, they did. Chapter 1 of Daniel, chapter 2 of Daniel. You see, the similarity to David. Did David have experience before he met Goliath? He had experiences. You see, but this is again we are coming to that point that before a major test in life, you have to have some smaller experiences. Fighting lion or a bear. They already took a stand before, and they are taking stand again. So, faith of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was unquestioning that God was omnipotent. Flames and kings meant nothing to them. He could deliver. You see, you have to know who is your God. You cannot stand for God if you don't know who is your God. You know what Job said when he was suffering? Even if he slays me, if he kills me, yes, I will maintain my integrity. I will not give up. They were thinking about the past. God, this is the God whom we serve, who brought our fathers through the Red Sea. He opened the Red Sea. He was feeding them with manna. He was taking care of Elijah. He was helping David in his trouble. This is our God whom we serve. We must know the God whom we serve. If you don't know God, how can you stand for God and for the values that represent God's kingdom? God has no change. You see what they say? Our God whom we serve. This is their God, and they are his people. But then something in verse 18 comes, which is really remarkable. Verse 18. But if not, what does that mean? Our God is able to save us if it's his will. But if it's not his will to save us, we still trust our God and his will. We will not bow down, even if he does not save us. We do not know what his will is, but we do not mind, for his will is best. They felt that loyalty to God was of greater importance than life itself. You see, brethren, these are true men of God. I will tell you the story of Polycarp, the bishop of Smyrna. You probably heard that story, who was brought before the Roman authorities and was asked or told to curse Christ, and then he would be released. Look what he said. He was an elderly, aged man, God-fearing man. He said, 86 years have I served him, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme my king who saved me? The Roman officer replied, unless you change your mind, I will have you burned. But Polycarp said, you threaten a fire that burns for an hour, and after a while is quenched. For you are ignorant of the judgment to come and of everlasting punishment reserved for the ungodly. Do what you wish. This was Polycarp, and he was burned. You see, his courage, his death of martyr, was such a tremendous encouragement for young Christians who were watching him, the leader of the community. He stood for Jesus Christ. How can I curse him? He has been so good to me. He saved me. He led me. We know that God is able to save. He's able to heal. He's able to deliver from temptation. He's able, but we have a God who may not. This is a hard saying, but this is also important to say. We believe in God who can, but who sometimes does not. You are having a cancer, and you know that God can heal you. Don't we know that, right? But how do we pray? If this is your will, and if by this you will be glorified, and if there is a purpose for this, Lord, I pray that you may heal me. You see, this is how we pray. We are not presumptuous. In some churches, people just say, we are dealing with a lady in a wheelchair in Toronto. Actually, a Hispanic lady, very nice lady. And she said, I was coming to some churches and they tell me, you have to have faith. Just come to the altar, God will heal you. You will walk. She's, completely paralyzed, face down. I said, look, Margarita, this is not how God operates. And she said, I agree with that. If this be thy will, God can save, God can heal, God can do anything. But even if he would not, we still trust him. This is how we serve the God. So the story from the book of Daniel is an important reminder that faithfulness to God may result in problems. A refusal to conform may cost you. It may be a high cost. You see, some of us who are coming from former totalitarian governments, communist countries, from Eastern, Central Eastern Europe, and I know some of you are here. We remember, some of us, we remember how it was there. Our young men were going to prison because they did not, take arms in the compulsory military service. We had problems with the schools because of Sabbath attendance. I can tell you my experience when I enrolled in a high school. Every Sabbath was a working day. I did not go for 2 months. I was a good student in the school, but ultimately the director of the school, the principal, and then political leader in the town, they had a special meeting and they said, well, will you go or not? You are not you are enemy of the system because of religious convictions. I had to leave the school and complete my high school through correspondence school. But God blessed me. I finished 4 years in 2 years. So I didn't suffer harm. But brethren, I know brethren who went to prison. I was not suffering so much. I don't know whether you saw, not long ago, in California, they were having, through media, they were transmitting the programs and sermons and interviews. I saw the interview with Brother Devay. Brother Tobias Stockler was interviewing Brother Devay, Francisco Devay. And thank God Brother Devay is still managing and. So he was telling the beginnings of the Seventh Adventist Reform movement in Europe when in the First World War. And he said, my grandfather, both paternal and maternal, were Adventist. And I don't know which one, he was taken in the military, and he was commanded to take the arms and go to war. And he refused to do it, humbly. And the commanding officer said, look, there is a court-martial. And they told him, look, you have to dig your grave. So he was digging the grave. But thankfully, there was another officer who wanted to save him. And somehow, miraculously, he was saved. Now, you are facing the death squad. Rifles to shoot you. See, brethren, when you stand in such circumstances, you need the courage, you need the vision, you need to know God whom you serve. Otherwise you cannot stand. This is what these young men faced. That if you stand for truth, it may have a cost. Ultimately, the fiery furnace king was enraged. The fire was, the temperature was increased sevenfold, and they threw them inside. Now, I will go quick here. What happened? They were not alone. King was expecting they will be burnt instantly incinerated in a few seconds. They were unharmed. They were bound. These fell off. They were walking, and there was the fourth one with them. It's a remarkable thing what happened. Not only that God protected their lives, but God came to be with them in that hour of trial, to sustain them and encourage them. And King could not believe his eyes. He asked his governors, didn't we throw 3 men in the fiery furnace? Now I can see 4. And the fourth one is like a son of God. Isn't it amazing what God did for them? So God has gone even further than that. And in the hour of trial, he strengthened his people. Now, Apostle Paul expressed the thought in Romans 8:35-38. Who shall separate us from love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or danger or sword? Nothing will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And what did Jesus promise to his followers? I will be, last words, Matthew 28:20, I will be with you always until the very end. This is the promise. God will be with us all the time until the very end. So now ultimately Nebuchadnezzar makes a confession. And what is the confession? And they came completely unscathed. And he realized the big mistake. Now he had to swallow his pride. You see, the kings and emperors have 2 options in these situations. They can be humbled or they can be offended by the truth. What did Pharaoh do when God was intervening on behalf of his people? He was hardened. Nebuchadnezzar actually made confession and he acknowledged that their God is superior God. And blessed is Jesus said, the one who doesn't take offense at me. But let me just in few moments tell you something here as well. Why didn't the young Hebrews bow down to that image? Which commandment they would transgress if they would bow to the image? Can you help me? First commandment, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Second commandment, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or anything, heaven, earth, whatever. Thou shalt not bow down or worship to them, right? See, they knew the law of God and they stood firm. Absolutely. Our God is one. So this is who they were. They were firm and stood, the ground. And you see, brethren, today we are living in a world where people are bowing many images. Today we don't have that golden image which is 90 feet tall, but we have some other screens that are in front of our eyes that are somehow people are worshiping. Media, entertainment. This is something that is very much present. People don't keep the Sabbath holy. People do not, they are worshiping mammon, worshiping wealth and money, pleasures. The contemporary culture, contemporary music. These are the things that are controlling the minds of people. And actually, this is what happened in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was a brilliant ruler, but he was a polytheist. He believed in many gods. And he was always vacillating between one God and many gods. And he expressed gratitude and honor to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in chapter 3 in verse 28. Look at this. It says here, Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not worship any God except their own God. But then in chapter 4, king has another troubling dream, and he says, all the wisest men of my kingdom have failed me, but thou, you can tell me, because the spirit of holy gods is in you. Why is he saying holy gods? Why not one God? So God of Israel was still one among many gods. And this is a problem today with Christians. Yes, we worship God, but we also may worship other gods, right? Now, brethren, this story is about worship. Whom shall we worship? Sunday law, how we know, and the mark of the beast is a worship issue. Who you will worship, who you will bow down. This is the third dangerous message. But let me tell you, today we live in a society when there is a great deception all around us. Look at the religious world. Do the religious leaders today know who is Antichrist? Can you help me? Who is Antichrist today? Antiochus Epiphanes. Not the man in Rome. You know the Catholics and Lutherans have signed the joint declaration on righteousness by faith. Do you know what is going on in the religious world? People do not understand. There is a total confusion. But confusion is not only in the religious world. Let me tell you, I spoke with a high-ranking Seventh-day Adventist official who works not far away from Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland here. He told me, look, Catholics are not really a problem for us. Roman Catholics are not a problem for us. We have a problem with the Orthodox Church. We are having a problem with Muslims. I was just looking, could not believe it. In my ears, my face. Now, I'm not saying everybody is talking like that, but I'm just telling you what people think. But not only in the religious world. If you look at the medical field, food industry, food processing industry, it's poisoning people. You know how much sugar is in the food that we eat, that is sold in the stores, and chemicals. How about medical field? This is a medical industrial complex behind the health services today. If you have time to watch on internet, you can check out The Quest for Cancer Cure. Very interesting series of videos. And they say it's unbelievable what's happening in that field. Because every second man until 2020 will die from cancer, every third woman. In medical epidemiology, cancer is a horrible disaster. And the treatment of cancer is also very poor. Now, I am not a medical expert and I don't want to give you final, word on that. But the issue is that, brethren, the treatment of cancer by chemotherapy and radiation is not the best way. The most carcinogenic substances are chemotherapy and radiation causing the cancer. Now, when I think about that and the health message that we have received, Adventism has gone in the hospital way, Seventh-day Adventism. We in the Reformed movement, we have not done sufficiently. But brethren, I heard a brother who was speaking about the wellness center. God has given us light for this time when there is so much confusion in the field of health. In that video, a leading biochemist, molecular biologist, oncologist, they have inquired with oncologists. 86% of them, oncologists, cancer specialists, would not themselves undergo, not any close family member let them go undergo classical cancer treatment today. They know what it does to a person. You see, the world is taken over by these powerful forces. Finances. You see, this is where we live. This is the world in which we live. We are called today to stand for truth, to stand for God. We are given light like early Hebrews, They received the light. And they had the courage to stand. And by the way, let me tell you also, for young people, I will close with that. There are also excellent videos. I found also on the internet by one Seventh-day Adventist teacher. His name is Ritzma. He's talking about the brain controlled by media. He's saying today, how our young people will be able to stand the test when today they are spending so much time in front of the screen, be it iPad or tablets, 8 hours in the school and 6-7 hours in front of the screen. And the brain is affected. You heard about Steve Jobs. He did not give to his children iPads to play with. Why? He knew it can affect the brain. So you see, brethren, we have to understand today what's going on. If you and I, if our children will stand today the test that is coming, we have to know what is the way to go in health, in education, in the missionary work. We have to know the prophecies. We have to know what's going on in the world. And then we will stand like these three men. I didn't have time to read for you, but on chapter 1, we are told these young men at their home, they were trained with strict temperance. This is why they were able to stand when the greatest trial came. Brethren, as we are approaching the end of the world, may God help us to dig deeper and to open our eyes and to see what's going in this world. This world is deceived in every field you look at. Only the saints will not be deceived. And may God help us. Amen.